Secret Circle.
Welcome to The Secret Circle with me, Dr. Luke Decker, the podcast where I chat with authors, filmmakers, musicians, and more about the art of their craft and let you in on some of their secrets. Today's guest is actor, director, and writer Miguel Perez, and today we are going to let you in on some of his secrets. Miguel, welcome to the show.
Hello, Doctor.
Hey, buddy.
I'm so happy to be here.
I'm glad
In
you
the
could come
Secret
on.
Circle. Oh,
Very glad
yes.
you could come on.
I've got all these scintillating secrets that I'm going to sizzle your way.
You're going to lift the veil.
Oh, yes.
Expose Hollywood and all of its deep, dark secrets.
There's been way too much exposure in Hollywood lately. So
just a little bit.
We'll reveal. Reveal.
Yeah. So one question I always ask the artists who come on, writer, actors, whatnot, is the philosophical question of why do you act? Why has that become a thing that you need or want or is become a fulfilling thing for you?
Wow, that's a very interesting question because the premise of the question is that there was some sort of a choice involved, and no, as a child, I discovered that I really liked playing make-believe, that I really liked spinning out stories kind of like from within the story itself. And then I discovered, theater when I was like in the 6th grade. That this is just the place I need to be. And that was it. Done deal. I found I had a thing I wanted to do. I found a venue in which to do it, and I was off to the races, and other venues, film, television, podcasting, writing, long form writing, all of these things made themselves, I discovered them and made them, I started using them as well, but it just is. It just is. Even when I've had to drop out and have brushes with the corporate world, I found myself using my desire to tell stories to earn the filthy lucre from the corporate masters,
Yes.
So, it just is. It's just what you do.
I like that. I can relate to that. So when kind of going back to when you were young, like when you were doing, make believe, what was that like for you? How were you, what characters were you embodying and whatnot?
Man, there was one character. My dad was a World War II vet. Consequently, anytime this TV show Combat came on, he and I were glued to it. And the great film actor Vic Morrow had a major role in this TV series. He played Sergeant Saunders, and he was like this cigarette smoking tough guy with the Tommy gun, but he had a heart of gold, and that was it. Anytime we would watch an episode of Combat, and then for the next week with my friends, I was always Sergeant Saunders, and we would play Combat, and we were always going after the Germans, and hiding out from the Germans, and oh my gosh, I loved, and plus, we had this thing where who could run and dive for cover better, so we would run across the lawn and dive for cover, and I always managed to get a flip and a roll in there.
Yep.
Never got hurt. I was 9 years old. Never got hurt.
Love.
But that sort of thing, that sort of life or death, fighting to save the world kind of make believe play was where I was at as a child.
Yeah.
And then later on, it got a little more sophisticated. I would be Napoleon Solo from The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Right.
Who was really just Sergeant Saunders with a suit and
yes,
and a sly grin.
Yeah. Yes.
But that kind of thing. Yeah.
When you started to, when you got older and you were, was it say you in 6th grade when you discovered theater? Was that was that the age?
Yeah.
Did you feel supported by your family with this endeavor? What was that like?
Oh yeah, my mom was
Mm.
nuts for it. I
Awesome.
mean, she helped me make a costume, and
Oh,
and she and my sister helped me get my hair just so, because I was playing Ebenezer Scrooge in the
ah,
Christmas play, Christmas Carol, and my one of my cousins, Ninfa, she brought over some granny glasses that she had. She was
oh,
kind of a mod child, so she brought over the granny glasses, and I wore those, and everybody pitched in.
yeah.
When I was a child, it's when I got older and started pursuing it, with an eye towards a profession, that people started backing off. But
Right.
no, they loved it. Yeah, and they were very sweet and very helpful that way.
Well, that's interesting. 'Cause that kind of leads me to my next question. Then is what was your journey like to pursuing it as a profession then? And
Ooh,
yeah.
yeah, that was well, that was different,
Mm,
because growing up in a Mexican family, the model is that the oldest son, um, grows up into the family and is in service to the family,
mm,
not only as an example, not only but as someone who takes up the mantle and carries on. And the man taking up the mantle of my family involved, getting a proper job, staying, marrying a proper girl,
mm.
having the proper kids, and carrying on that tradition. And it wasn't anything that I had any desire to do at all. And so I was joining up with the local theater troupe, and my father was sitting home steaming, and my mother was praying, and my sister was kind of cheering me on. And it all came to a head about the time it was time to graduate from high school and go to
Mm.
college, and what was I going to study, and what were my parents going to pay for me to study, and it wasn't going to be theater arts. So I joined the Marines.
Ah,
Join the Marines. That was my solution. I figured, what's the one way that I can go out and have my own life and still have my parents' blessing?
right.
And so I raised my hand for the United States Marine Corps,
There we go.
and that was it. And I think what shocked my father, I don't think he didn't realize that I played such a long game, because after I came back,
Yeah.
and he started to say, "Okay, son, well, you're back now," and it was like, "No, I'm not."
Right.
And he realized that there was nothing he could say.
Yeah.
I just completed 4 years in the Marine Corps. I was a sergeant. I trooped to the rifle battalion. There was nothing he could say except "Good luck, son."
Mm. Did that
And that
cause
was
any tension for you guys?
Oh yeah, no, my father and I were estranged for
Mm.
at least a decade after that.
Wow.
I mean, not bitterly estranged, but there was just I had outflanked him. I had beat him in his own game, if you will.
Yeah.
And my father, he was a tough, mean, macho, camel smoking World War II guy. He didn't like that. He didn't like to
Yeah.
lose. So it took him about 10 years before he finally came to see me perform in a Shakespeare play. And
Wow.
then, he was the first one to his feet, uh, which is his way of saying, "Okay, son." You know. But that took a while. It took a
Yeah.
while.
Wow. Yeah, I know that it's always tricky sometimes when family's involved
Oh, yeah.
how to what degree do they support or not support, you know,
Yeah.
you and
Yeah.
your art, and when they don't, man, that's tough. That's tough.
Well, looking back on it now that I'm a parent, and now that I'm almost, well, I'm an older man than my father was when I made my big decision.
Mm.
I mean, a life in art is nothing that you want for a child, because of all of the.
Mm.
No, it's a hell of a life. It's a life well lived, but boy, there's so many more pleasurable ways to live a life. I mean, it's no generally
Yeah.
pleasurable. I don't think a simple middle class existence is never going to have the highs and lows of a life in art, but
Mm.
it's certainly you're never going to be running the risks that you do in a life in art.
Yeah. What do you think are or for you at least, what were the big lows and the reasons why you would maybe not necessarily encourage, your kids or whatnot to go into a life of art?
I think the biggest low was maybe a 6 or 7 year period,
Mm,
not long after I got married and my son was born.
mm,
When I mean, I managed to book work, but not enough to sustain my family.
mm,
And yes, I did what I needed to do. I took whatever jobs I needed to. I did what I did needed to do to sustain my family. I'm not Paul Gauguin, to just take off. But but in that time, I fell into a horrible uh, moment of comparing my work to my colleagues. Well, why is he working? I could have done. And it
mm,
was, I tortured myself with that, trying, oh, no, look at him. What the hell? Why is he getting all of this adulation and I'm not? And it was utterly self-defeating, and
mm.
it just was just salt in the wound.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I got out of that way of thinking that things started to turn back
Mm,
in my direction. But it was, that kind of thing. It's just a lot of self-pity and a lot of pointless comparisons.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's tricky because I think a lot of artists go through that. I know I sure as hell do quite a bit.
Mm.
How did you work through that? How did you learn to sort of change your mindset to not get that, let that be, get that be in the way for you?
It's funny. That's an interesting question because once again, and when going back to that, it suggests that there was a choice involved. Actually, I'll tell you what happened. Um, what happened was that my mother died,
Mm,
and I literally had to stop everything that I was doing to go home to help my sister and my mother through that period of time. Because my sister was there caring for our mother,
yeah.
and I guess I overdue. I guess it wasn't too little, too late. My father had already passed, but it was time to come home and be the son
Right.
and to do my duty. And when that was complete, when my sister and I were sitting there at the bedside, holding her hands, and I mean, I had my ear to her chest. I heard her last lub dub of her heartbeat.
Mm,
When it was finished, all of the bitterness, all of the self-pity, all of the weird comparisons, I guess, died with it, because the next time I saw a colleague do well, I felt this wonderful joy
mm,
for them, and so I don't know. Maybe it was because I finally fulfilled that expectation on some level,
yeah.
that born in expectation, or maybe it's because there was something that I felt was unfinished that finally I put a period on. But since that time, I've only been happy for my colleagues
Mm,
and tried to champion the work of the men and women that I work with, men and women of my generation in both in theater and film and television and whatnot. And now that I've come to this age, I'm also, fostering young actors, teaching them and helping them to come along and really taking great joy in their successes.
mm.
No credit, just joy.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And I think that's it's like it's a sense of kind of maybe gratitude for you and for them, and helping you move on that way, which I think is a really useful tool for artists, just being grateful on both sides.
Oh, absolutely. Because just to have a life like this, is something to be so grateful for.
Yeah,
You know? And
definitely.
yeah, so yes, I'm filled with gratitude.
Yeah.
You know, and the occasional cocktail.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm curious now, what was your first major role? What was for you the first big role that sort of kicked things off for your acting career? The one that changed everything, I guess.
Oh, well, it's funny. I guess there are so many like milestones, but I think the one that that changed everything for me as an artist um, was when I played the role of Belarius in
Mm.
uh, Cymbeline at the New York Shakespeare Festival at the great Newman Theater at the Public Theater. I had been hired on to that job
Mm.
as an understudy. In fact, pretty much my career in theater at that point was pretty much just sort of like being in small plays in really ugly little theaters downtown, and the occasional understudy job for a bigger theater. And the Public Theater, the great Public Theater, led by the great impresario Joe Papp, they deigned to offer me a position understudying as a swingman, understudying several roles in Cymbeline, starring Joan Cusack was in that, and Don Cheadle, wonderful players in the show. So, no, I'll think of it in a second. Be that as it may. So I hire on. Final preview week, me and the other understudies, we show up, and one of the other understudies was Cameron Manheim, who's now this award-winning actress. She's doing wonderful things. But so I'm studying the part, and I was understudying 5 roles. Belarius was the biggest of them, so I'm like studying that one very carefully. And after 3 days on the job, watching the show and rehearsing in the afternoon, the stage manager says, "All right, understudies, you can go at the interval. You can go home at the interval." Okay, so that sort of says, okay, that's our pattern now. We go home at the interval, and that'll be it for the next 6 weeks. That night, 11:30 at night, I get a call from the stage manager. Fred Newman was run over by one of the war engines in Act 2. He's all right, but he cannot go on tonight. You're it. Be at the theater at 10. So here I am at 10 in the morning. I walk in the theater. The costumer grabs me. We're on the stage. I can't rehearse with everybody at once. So as people were coming in, I would rehearse. And I have a few minutes to rehearse with Don, a few minutes to rehearse with Joni. A few minutes to rehearse with Jesse Borregos, all of these amazing players. And and the costumer's like sewing a costume on, because Fred Newman, he was the great star of Mabou Mines, Lee Brewer's company, a legendary avant-garde theater company. Fred was more portly than me. I was a young man in those years. I was in my early 30s, and Fred was very established. He kind of looks like how I look now. So
very handsome.
Had to create a whole new costume for me. They had to put a wig on me. They're building a beard on my face and all of that. And then I go all through these. I can't believe I actually knew the lines. My poor wife at that time, she was up with me all night working on lines. Oh. I go back. It's half hour. Mr. Joe Papp comes into the dressing room. I'm still in the communal dressing room. He comes in, "Mickey, it's a big night. You got to do this for us, all right?" I said, "Yeah, yes, Mr. Papp." "All right, Mickey, I know you can do it." And to the day he died, he always called me Mickey. I don't know if he knew my name was Miguel or not, but he always called me Mickey. So I'm there, I'm dressed, and I open Act 2 alone on stage.
Wow.
I'll never forget it. The lights, the lights were down. Stage manager gave me a push on the shoulder. I went out to where I knew my spot was. lights came up and I began Act Two. And the audience was rapt. My voice, it was a voice I'd never heard come out of me. This voice was coming out of me that I'd never heard before. And I was completely at ease. And I would look to my right and my left, and in the wings were all the members of the company watching. And I could feel that they wanted me to do well. And I did. I did. It went well. It went beautifully. I might as well have been rehearsing it for a year, as beautifully as it went. And when the curtain came down at the end of the show, the audience, they were on their feet. I know it wasn't because of me. I think we just had a really good night as a company, but maybe because the company was really trying to bring their A game to help me. And so the audience, the company all came and they were all like pounding on me, Miguel, Miguel, Miguel. And I was like stunned.
Yeah.
I've never had to be an understudy again at the New York Shakespeare Festival.
Wow.
Mr. Papp shook my hand. And that was the moment when I finally arrived on the New York theater scene.
Yeah.
You know, and there have been other great moments, but that one lives with me because that was the moment that I knew that I was in the right place.
Yeah.
That my aspirations weren't silly, that I wanted to come and be an artist in this place, and I was welcomed.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, it sounds to me like that's a big moment where you felt that you as an artist are justified being an artist. Like, you have that, which is huge.
You nailed it right there, my friend.
Yeah.
Yes, and it wasn't just it was about yes, I should be an artist. This was the right choice to make. It all came together in that moment. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that, because kind of building off that as well. Like, I mean, the business of art is very tricky. It's very greedy and not nice in times. You know, no matter what you're doing, whether you're acting or writing or whatnot, it's a very many ways very cutthroat. So you know, you're leading up to this big moment for you where you finally get the realization that you are where you need to be. This is who you are. You are this artist. But maybe leading up to that bit and maybe afterwards, how did you sort of manage feelings of maybe rejection, and were there any did uncertainty at any point creep back in, or
sure it ebbs and flows. You have a moment like that. I had a moment like that, and I rode that feeling for weeks.
Oh yes.
And then you go in and you get a second call back for a Coca-Cola commercial, and somebody else books it. It's like, and big star of the New York Shakespeare Festival, but when it comes time for the bucks, snatched away. So it puts it in a proper perspective.
Yeah, definitely. So these are maybe more technical questions, and with like a splash or a sprinkling of philosophy. There we go. That was a tongue twister for some reason.
It's hard. It's easy for you to say.
So what, in your opinion, what makes a good actor?
I think what makes a good actor is the courage to say yes when all you want to say is no. The courage to say yes, the courage to do something that you don't know how it's going to turn out, but you're willing to go anyway. I think that a good actor will go in there and just just do the job and hope for the best, and take the consequences as they come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it boils down just to willingness. Are
I
you
like
willing
that.
or are you not? Are you game or you're not?
Yeah.
If you're game, go. If you're not,
Yeah.
stay home.
Yeah. What do you have a moment where you can think back to, in your past where you had that courage to say yes
Oh yeah,
when you wanted to
yeah.
say no, I guess. Yeah.
Well, I was at the American Repertory Theater. I was an established player. I was a journeyman player who played in all these great houses, and I was there. And another one of the great players. I was just a player. This man was a great player. His name was Jeremy Geit.
Mm.
He was one of the great leading men of that company. His mother passed away, and he had to go to London to take care of that.
Mm.
And even though he had an understudy who was ready to go, the producer, the artistic director of the company, Robert Brustein, who just passed away recently, great man of the theater, great critic, playwright, impresario, a truly legendary man of the theater, a man of tremendous status. He came to me one night. I was performing in The Seagull, and he said, "Miguel, you know that Jeremy's going to be leaving our production of Misalliance for a few performances." I said, "Yes, I'm sorry to hear about that." He says, "I'm afraid, Miguel, that his understudy may not be up to the job. Would you step in?" And, I could have said no, and he would have honored that. But for whatever reason, I was game. I said, "Yeah, sure. Let me at it." I hadn't even read the play. I had 2 days. He said, "No, you can go on holding the book. I would just rather have you there." So I went, "Okay, fine." But I was so good in those years at memorizing, and this was Shaw. So believe it or not, memorizing good writing is easier than memorizing bad writing. So I'm there, and it turns out that the reason that Brustein wanted me for at least one of those performances was because that was when a whole bunch of intellectuals were going to be watching the show, and they're going to have a big Q&A afterwards. So already having had the experience of being the understudy who saves the day, I thought, "Oh yeah, I'll do it." And yeah, I had a hell of a good time. They were just, by that time I knew that one of the great advantages is that all you have to do is show up and you're a hero.
Yeah.
And I showed up, and I put some spin on it. I was doing old John Tarleton, but I decided that old John Tarleton was going to have a little bit of panache. And then on the night all the intellectuals and scholars were there, I decided on a line reading. There was one line that always kind of, Jeremy, God bless him, I love Jeremy, but he's passed away now. But he was wrong about this line. He says, "And I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and under all of this is a human soul." And then he put a period on it, and he kind of looking around, and he goes, "Tarleton's underwear," and off he goes. And I thought, no, let's go for it. So and then all of it is a human soul. And I said, "Tarleton's underwear." The idea being that this man, John Tarleton, who has this underwear company, his underwear is a human soul. So at the Q&A, after all of that, and I didn't finish college, right? I had one semester of college, and here I was, artist in residence at Harvard University, and all these, and this one scholar whose name, I think it was David Wheeler, I don't know, he says, I found that to be a very interesting line. The idea that the human soul is, in fact, John Tarleton's underwear. I found that rather compelling. What do you say about that, Mr. Perez? I said, please, I was all I could do to remember the lines. Yeah.
Love
Why,
that.
why did I tell that story? What incited me to tell that story? Oh
Hey
yeah,
man,
because
we're just going
being
through your
game.
history, man. It's
Yeah.
great. It's
Yeah, it was
great.
game. Yeah. That I was game. I said, I'll take on anything. I didn't
Yeah.
care.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was ready to go down in flames, performing
Yeah.
one of the great Bernard Shaw plays for a bunch of Harvard academics. But what the hell? What if
Yeah.
I had, luckily I didn't go down in flames. I think I got a few good laughs and got them thinking a little bit. Not bad for
Yeah.
a boy from San Jose.
Exactly, man. No, you nailed it. You nailed it. So
Yeah.
the flip side of the question of what makes a good actor is what in your opinion makes a bad actor?
I think a bad actor is an actor who disconnects their work from the work of all the other artists, even the dead playwright.
Mm.
A bad actor is somebody who goes on and just does their shtick. The great movie star Victor Mature he's quoted saying, "Hey, this is my one profile. This is my other profile. That's what I've got for you." And I recognize in that a certain. I mean, the fact that he knew it, I know, okay, I can accept that. But there are some actors out there, some people who practice the profession, who have no idea what they're doing. They just have a thing that they do, and they do it well, and they do it no matter what the story is.
Yes.
And some of them make a lot of money doing it. Some people want to make that money too, and so they will craft a story that will fit what this actor does.
Yes.
And they all make a lot of money. But
yeah,
that's a bad actor.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you. We won't name names. Not that we know
we won't
these
name
people,
names,
but
but I think I've got people thinking about what.
yeah. Well, yeah, because I mean, what it's making me think of there's a certain type of action film, there's a certain type of comedy, there's a certain type of
Mhm.
rom-com that if you have half a brain and you know this industry, you can think about, okay, this person is always in this kind of thing and they are just always that,
Yeah,
and
and
they
they do
have to
it
have
beautifully.
yes, there's stuff shaped around that. But if you can be versatile, so like someone who I think is versatile and really great, and both like comedic but can also be serious and interesting, that I think maybe a bit an odd choice to pick. But like someone like Jack Black, I love Jack Black. He's just great at
Jack Black.
comedy, but he also nails some serious, more nuanced stuff quite a bit.
Mhm. Yeah.
And like that takes work. Where there's other comedic actors who just do their
No, and it's funny, Jack Black. I had the great pleasure of working with Jack Black on Margaret Cho's TV show. It was called All American Girl. So a
yeah.
lot of comics. I used to hang out with a bunch of comics, but I found Jack to be very, like engaged and intellectually
Yeah,
active in the way he went after the work. He
yeah,
wasn't just doing things on instinct. He cared.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, he's cool. Kind of speaking about actors in general at the moment and performing outside of your work. What is a recent performance that you've seen, whether on film or at the theater, that has just been remarkable? That you're just like that is a great performance. I'm glad to have seen that. Whether yeah,
Well, actually, uh, David Fincher's new film, The Killer,
ah
which is a wonderful film, wonderful cast. A friend of mine's in it, Carrie O'Malley, brilliant. But man, Tilda Swinton
mm,
just knocked me out.
yeah,
She has one scene and the clarity and the specificity and the nuance and the ease that she brought to this one scene sitting at a table in a restaurant.
Mm.
And there's only, I mean, in any big commercial film, every word is crafted so, but so you only have so many words, and she could have done with fewer,
Mm.
because of all that she was bringing to the character, to the moment, to the event, the life before, what was about to come. All of that was there.
Yeah.
That Tilda Swinton, she is an artist of the highest caliber.
Yeah.
And so I recommend everyone go and see this film. It's on HBO. I think HBO. No, it's Netflix. Netflix.
Yeah.
The Killer.
The Killer.
Oh, just beautiful. And in fact, I think Tilda Swinton has the most lines in the whole movie. The whole film is spare.
Yes. Yeah, it is.
Just gestures.
Yeah.
Just moments, just spatial.
That's the one. I like it. So you've had a huge career in theater, but you've also been in movies and TV shows. So for those who are listening who maybe don't know, I picked a few from your IMDb page that I thought would be fun to mention because they're like, oh, I know that show. But you've been in stuff like The Wonder Years and Frasier and Star Trek Voyager and Fear the Walking Dead and The Rookie. You've been in a bunch of stuff. And I remember once, I think this was last year, we were Claire and I were, I think it was before our daughter was born. I think it was kind of just before. So we were sitting down watching something on Disney Plus. I think we were watching The Resident, which is a medical drama.
Oh yeah.
And I'm sitting there. We're sitting there watching. I find the show to be just terrible. It's such a terrible show. It's cheesy and hammy and just whatever. But it's a fun 45 minutes of mindlessness. And I'm sitting there, and then there's a gurney gets wheeled in, and I'm like, wait, oh my God, that's Miguel. And it's like, there you are. Then you're like a main, and you become like a main dude for the whole episode. It's like, holy shit, I had no idea. So it's always funny because I'm also rewatching Seinfeld, and I'm like, oh my God, there's Miguel.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great. So
yeah.
It's always fun to like be watching stuff and suddenly you just pop up. I'm like, that's amazing. But across your filmography, right? What's two questions. The first one is what is your strategy to find the character? So you're a bit player in an ongoing show, right? Whether that is like something like The Resident or The Rookie or Seinfeld or Star Trek Voyager.
Yeah.
Like you're just in it for you have this slice of episode that's yours. How do you find that character in such a short amount of time? I guess kind of like what you were saying about Tilda Swinton in Killer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I think the first thing you have to do is clear the decks, blank slate, and look at exactly the words that were put down on the page. Because, well, like in Star Trek Voyager, I'm playing some sort of a Starfleet physician, a human Starfleet physician who specializes in treating Vulcans. So I'm thinking, oh, okay. And then
Vulcan Alzheimer's.
Well, yeah, Bendai syndrome.
That's
what got me the job, because when I read for what was it, Brandon Braga? Where I read for the
Brendan Braga, yeah.
And and he says, "Do you have any questions?" I said, "Yes. In this scene, does Tuvok have Bendai syndrome? Is that what's going on here?" And he just smiled really wide. And he said, Yeah. I said, "Okay, then let's go."
Love it.
So they booked me, but then I have to sit there and I think, okay, so now all of a sudden the doctor who was a hologram on the Voyager arrives, and I start asking, well, what do you think?
Mm.
And I realized that for me to be grasping at straws that way, I'm somebody who really cares
Yeah.
not only about the patient, but about gaining knowledge and trying to crack this nut.
Mm.
So I decided that I was a guy who doesn't sleep much because he's got a patient who needs help,
Mm.
and who's always going through and looking for something and trying to something that, and who's always game, who
Mm.
has the courage to say yes
Yeah.
to whatever comes. And so when Mr. Hologram shows up, it's okay, let's try it.
Yeah.
So I guess art and life were sort of
Yeah.
imitating each other there, but yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's a good point though. But like I think they do, art and life imitate and influence each other. I mean, just to, like you've heard a lot of the novel that I wrote for my PhD, because you and I, Miguel, we're in a writers group together, and it's great
Yeah,
fun.
yeah.
And one of the things I was I've kind of with distance have been able to sort of accept and understand is we were talking about this before we went on camera, is that my protagonist in that novel is a really damaged guy. He's a really sad, damaged guy. And the time in which I was writing that story, I was in a very down place, emotionally and whatnot. It was just not a super great time, and I could feel that being funneled into the writing. I could feel it funneling into the story, where it's like cathartic in a way, where
Sure.
yeah. So it's life is always kind of influencing your art, I think.
I agree. Yeah.
I feel like when people say otherwise, it's stupid. There's like, for this is a lame example maybe, there's a video going around on Twitter about some comic book shop owner who's really mad because he's talking about modern day comic book artists and writers are just doing self inserts. And back in the day, they never did that with Captain America and the X-Men and the
Oh,
Fantastic Four.
sure.
And I'm kind of like, nah, if you go back, if you really went back and you looked at the artists, you looked at the writers, you looked at what was going on in their lives, and then you looked at
Yes.
their books, you would see reflections. You just
I
would.
mean, the Marvel team in the old days, in the golden age,
Yeah.
they were totally channeling their own problems as human beings. They were the original writers' room.
Yeah.
Now we have these writers' rooms, and it's just a bunch of people working stuff out and trying to make art out of it. And they
Yeah.
were doing that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think, and that's why Marvel reigned supreme for so long.
Oh, yeah.
Continues to.
Yeah.
Although the DC's
Mm.
finally starting to catch up, but Marvel.
Yeah. It's catching up a little bit. And
Yeah.
I mean, I totally accept that, like, sometime the art doesn't land. Like, that's a different story.
Yeah.
But that's, so I'm fine with with that. But okay, so kind of part two of my question then, after kind of finding a character, how you find that is, you've played so many. Is there one or a series of characters that you've played that have really stayed with you, and why?
Okay. Well, and why? Well, there's a lot of. I mean, I'm sure folks would love to hear about, a lot of the film characters, and some of them are fantastic, and then some of the television, the bartender from Fear the Walking Dead, fascinating character,
Mm.
stone cold. But the character that stays with me to this very day, and granted, first time I played it was years ago, is the ghost from Hamlet.
Ah.
First time I played it opposite the great Shakespearean Mark Rylance. In those days, he's now Sir Mark Rylance, and rightly so. He's a great artist. But in those days, he was having his first big success. He had done this production of Hamlet. He had just done in London to tremendous response. He had cemented himself as an artist in London.
Mm.
He brought the production to Cambridge, Mass. I was hired on to play the ghost. and the player king.
Mm.
And I asked myself, why does a man's spirit carry on, but not a loving carrying on, but a demanding revenge? He was cut short, but he didn't get a chance to say all the things he wanted to say.
Yeah.
So he goes to the battlements. His ghost goes to the battlements and tries to continue the fight. And finally his son comes to connect. This is what I need you to do. So it occurred to me that old Hamlet had this desire for connection with his son that he didn't have in life and that he could only have now. And that desire for connection with your progeny. That's as a father, I was father at the time, and it goes on, we're talking about Marvel, that same feeling that I had in my desire to connect with my son, young Hamlet. When my son Alex and I were watching Black Panther, this wonderful Marvel show, there's a moment where the son, Prince T'Challa, he's talking to his father. And his father, who had been the Black Panther and was now passing the mantle, he says, "My son, a man who has not prepared his children for the eventuality of his death has failed in his duty as a father." So there it was, the ghost of Hamlet, he failed in his duty in his father because he didn't fully prepare his son. So then I got to do the ghost again during the pandemic, when there was nothing but death going on.
Yeah.
And I kind of started to think about those things while doing it again. Not a great, it was a good production. I didn't give it my best effort. Got screwed up on hitting the right button for my microphone. So but the effort was there.
Yes.
And now, one of my students, an international student, who's she's this beautiful German model. She wants to do Hamlet, and so I've been talking a lot about that. So it keeps coming back, and now I'm probably about the age that old Hamlet's father was when he was poisoned in his orchard.
Right.
And there's something. And I'm going deaf in one ear, so I don't know that. Oh, and there's one other thing that brought it home. I'm sorry.
No. But
I had done that performance with Rylance, and it was wonderful and tremendous acclaim, big success. 10 years later, maybe 12, I was in Albuquerque, New Mexico, doing a Hallmark movie. With Kate Nelligan and Marsha Harden, wonderful actresses, wonderful artists. And I'm in Albuquerque, and we're shooting at this junior college, this technical school in downtown Albuquerque. And the makeup artist says to me, "There's a lady looking at you." I look down the hall, and sure enough, there's this lady with glasses. I guess she worked there at the technical school. She's poking her head out of her office, and we made eye contact, and she poked away. And I'm looking, and she poked her head out again. And I looked at her, and so I said, "Wow, yeah, she's checking me out." Albuquerque, New Mexico. So I'm sitting there, waiting for my shot, waiting for my scene, ready to get called. She looks at me, she looks one more time, and she comes out and she starts walking toward me. Oh boy. What's in there? She probably saw me on Seinfeld, or maybe she saw me stick a gun in Johnny Depp's mouth, or some crazy, who knows,
Yep.
She says, "Excuse me, are you Miguel Perez?" I said, yes, I am. And she says, I was a student at Harvard 10 years ago. I saw you play the ghost in Hamlet. I've never forgotten it.
Wow.
I started to weep.
Yeah.
I said, oh, God, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
May I hug you? And so she said,
Oh.
yes. And we hugged and we embraced and we talked about the play. And I guess that's another reason why
I love
that
that.
particular role is just, I'm stuck with that
Yeah.
because it was only then that I began to realize that role, that character
Mm.
sticks with people. You know, people remember Hamlet, of course.
Yeah.
They remember the player king, but they always remember the ghost,
Yeah.
the inciting character. So,
Yeah.
as an actor, as actors, it's our duty to, even a small character only appears 3 times in the play.
Yeah.
Has to be, you have to give it your best.
Yeah.
And
I agree.
I don't know, my instinct was to give it my best, and sure enough, I touched a life.
You did.
And if we're to assume correctly, then I must have touched some other lives with
Yeah.
that performance.
Yeah, I love that.
And
That's a really good
yeah,
character. I like that. That's awesome. I think that kind of brings me to. I'll wrap it up with one last question here.
sure. Sorry to
There's
be
so much
so
more I
verbose.
could talk about with you. I'll bring you back for another show because we could talk
Okay.
about
Well,
writing
you asked.
books. I want to talk about your directing. There's so much stuff we
Oh,
could.
absolutely. I'm game. I'm
Part
game.
2 will definitely happen in season 2
Oh.
of the Secret Circle.
Oh.
But yeah, theater, man. Theater's such a big thing for you, and I'm curious because you've done it all. But I'm curious: is there a difference between, or what do you think the impact is of live theater versus watching something on film or TV?
Yeah. Well, I think the key difference is that in a theater, when you tell the story well, when the ideas land, you know it by the audience response. And it's not always about applause.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's about an intake of breath. Sometimes it's about a wave of silence.
Mm.
And there is something that's magic, isn't
Yeah.
it? To put a thought in someone's head and have them think it for the rest of their lives. And yes, you can do that with a film. I mean, look what Tilda Swinton did to me with The Killer.
Yeah.
But in theater, it's instantaneous. It's something that's happened, something that I was thinking came out of me and went into you.
Yeah.
And now we're both here and we share something now.
Yeah.
I think that's why people like to go out for drinks after a play, after a performance, because you don't want it to be over.
No.
Something has happened. An exchange.
Yeah.
A communion.
I love that. I totally agree with you on that. I totally agree. There is something really magical about the live performance, and especially when there's one that really resonates. And the same could probably also can be said for film and maybe a show and stuff like that. But there is sometimes a very uniqueness to the live performance. Sometimes those hit harder than the film.
Well, I mean, look what's going on now with the wonderful pop star Taylor Swift, who has touched lives with her live show era. And same thing with Beyonce, Queen Bee. She gets onto a stage and people just, I mean, it almost puts Elvis to shame in some ways, the exchange of energy, and somebody once told me a story about the great country and western star Garth Brooks when he was first beginning his career. His father apparently was a big influence on him. Oh. And one time they were rehearsing, and Garth, maybe he wasn't into it or something, I'm not sure what, but his father admonished him. He said, son, Garth, you've got to do your best,
Mm.
because you can give these people back their money, but you can't give them back their time.
Yes.
And there's the thing.
Yes.
There's the thing.
Absolutely.
When somebody takes the time and money to come and see you on a stage,
Yeah.
you alone or you with a company of players,
Yeah.
that's a commitment
Yes.
that you have to respond to.
Yes.
And pay back, not in kind, but even more.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a perfect place to bring this to a pause, because I'll bring you back for another episode. For sure. Miguel, thank you so much for coming on. I really was glad to have this conversation with you
Luke,
and dive into all this stuff.
Man, entirely my pleasure. I get such a kick out of talking about this stuff. It's really, I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you for asking such really deep, big questions.
It's the secret circle, man. It's the secret circle. We're letting people in on the secrets.
There it is. There it is. Well,
so do you? You're not a big social media guy. If you want people to find you or find your work, where would you like them to look?
Well, you can find my website, MiguelPerezActor.com.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm Miguel Pro Actor. And what else? That's Miguel
about it.
Actor. You can find me on Facebook, probably. I don't do X. I never did Twitter, and I don't do X.
Fair play.
And for what it's worth, Saturday night I will be with the Leo Rising Theater doing a play called The Disappearing Act, which I almost forgot. But and so
fantastic.
The work goes on.
Awesome. And for anyone listening on Spotify or Apple, there will be links in the description to Miguel's website, so you can definitely find him through there. And if you're watching on YouTube, there will also be a link in the description of this video, so you can also go there. Again, Miguel, thank you so much. This was a lot of fun. Look forward to bringing you back. And everyone, thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week. Have a... The Secret Circle.